want to talk to you about semaglutide and some misconceptions and even maybe different ways we can approach this drug, the use of this drug to make it maybe more cost effective and even manage some of the shortages there have been. So in summary, semaglutide it's pronounced different ways. That's how I've been pronouncing it, semaglutide. Ozempic and Wegovy are the brand names. Ozempic is the diabetes formula and Wegovy is the weight loss formula. Both have been approved, FDA approved in the United States. Wegovy for weight loss and certain circumstances, and semaglutide as Ozempic for type 2 diabetes. And they're called GLP-1 agonists, glucagon-like peptide 1 agonists, which means they turn on this GLP-1. It was discovered almost a decade ago as part of the pathway that a drug called metformin activates. Metformin raises GLP-1 levels up, and this semaglutide pushes GLP-1 forward, which has effects in the brain and the pancreas and the gastrointestinal tract. So we respond better with insulin sensitivity, and it decreases cravings for food, especially junk food. And interesting, it decreases cravings and habits of other sort, less drinking, less compulsive behaviors. It also has other effects, like it seems to help autoimmune diseases. And since it came out, there's been a regular shortage. There's people that most people don't have insurance coverage for Wegovy, so they're using Ozempic, which is FDA approved for diabetes, and they're getting their insurance companies to pay for the Ozempic, which could potentially be a problem with insurance fraud if you don't have weight loss coverage of diabetes. That's something that I don't think we've sorted out yet. But because these drugs this drug and other obviously classes have been on the drug shortage list by the FDA, they can be compounded, and they're compounded under with both what's called 503A and B laboratories in mass, and these compounders are catching up with demand. That winds up being a lot less expensive. So we're going to talk about some of the misconceptions about Ozempic and Wegovy / semaglutide and how we've been using it in our practice successfully in the past couple of years. So again, FDA approved for weight loss for a couple of years, I think 3 years now. Wildly popular, so popular there's been regular shortages, and then the compounded versions have come into play. So there's different forms of compounding, and there's been a lot of attempts to discredit compounders because they're using a different form of semaglutide, perhaps salts, but now they're pretty much all using semaglutide base. They sometimes will add B12 or carnitine to it, I think, to reduce some of the side effects of nausea. They're allowed to do that, and also gives them maybe some intellectual property protection. So I'm not going to really discuss the compounding of it, but that's where we're seeing it commonly used as compounded semaglutide because it's far less expensive. The Wegovy's over $1,000 a month. So we look at the studies. People saw between 15 and 17% weight loss over a year period, a little over a year period. And we look at that weight loss, most of it occurred, or the highest percentage of weight loss occurred in the first 13 or so weeks. First few months, the weight loss really dropped, weight come down really fast, and then it sort of slowed down. And in about 48 weeks, it trailed off, and then the weight stayed stable. In some cases, went up a little bit. So we see the weight loss not continuous, but people are, thinking they have to take this drug forever. That's what they're told by big pharma. Here's a summary of some of these studies, and I'm going to talk about things like the muscle mass, some of the dose escalation issues, and what we're seeing in successful in our practice that reduces costs substantially. So first off, they showed that this caused weight loss, and for a big pharma company, they want you to be at it forever. And the bid is to call obesity a disease. That way your insurance could be potentially forced to pay for it, because most insurances don't pay for it right now. Medicare certainly doesn't. And if we did have coverage for semaglutide mandated, it'd be, probably 3/4 of the population would be on it. And at $20,000 a year, that healthcare insurance is immediately, bankrupt, make Medicare insolvent. So we got to manage this cost thing somehow. So what they did in the study is they start people off at 0.25 milligrams, and every 4 weeks they increase it until they get 2.4 milligrams. So actually, the starting dose where you lose most of the weight at is 1/10 as high as the maintenance dose. That is because you rapidly get tolerant to the semaglutide. In fact, when you start it out, if you start up on the high dose, it make you very sick to your stomach. It has a lot of side effects or gastrointestinal. That's mainly just gastrointestinal, but they're very manageable at these low doses. And as time goes by, your body gets sort of immune or just used to this semaglutide, and you have to escalate the dose to get additional weight loss. So the starting dose is 0.25 milligrams. And the finishing dose is 2.4 milligrams, 10 times as much. And on the maintenance dose, you're not typically losing more weight. You're losing weight on these starting doses because your body rapidly gets tolerant to it. But there's another thing that happens is that tolerance rapidly gets extinguished. It goes away when you're off of it. In fact, if you're off of the medicine, let's say you're in your maintenance dose of 2.4 milligrams, if you stop it for a month, you can't go back to 2.4 generally. It will cause too much GI distress. You got to start over at the lower dose again. So we have this ability to look at tolerance and extinction of tolerance. We also can see that most of the weight loss occurred in the first, say, 3 months. So that's where the most rapid weight loss occurred. More than half of the weight loss occurred at that point. And we have a drug that's expensive and it is in shortage. So how can we use less of it? And we know that the maintenance dose, which doesn't cause weight loss, is 10 times higher than the starting dose. So what can we do? We also know that metformin increases GLP-1 levels and can be used synergistically with it. We typically don't start metformin and semaglutide at the same time because they both have GI upset as a side effect. And if you were to get that, you wouldn't know which drug is causing it, but they can be taken together. So we've done in our practice, and I've written about this before, wrote a white paper on it, is we put a group of people, they were in our South Carolina office and wanted to lose weight. They were overweight or obese on 13 weeks of semaglutide, mimicking the clinical study trial. So they escalated the dose, but they just did 13 weeks. And then they stopped it for 2 months and went on metformin. And then they had the opportunity to go on the semaglutide at the starting dose again if they wanted to lose more weight or if they wanted to sort of keep it off. And we found after a year was that people lost an average 14% of their body weight in the first 12 weeks, much faster than they did in a clinical trial. But this wasn't a placebo-controlled trial. They knew they were getting the real drug, so they probably made some additional efforts. Plus, they worked together, so there's some social interaction, maybe eat a little healthier. We buy lunch for our staff, so they eat more Mediterranean food. So they could kind of work on their weight loss. Yeah, but they lost 14% of their body weight on average. And then they kept it off for a year. Some lost much more than that, but nobody gained the weight back. And what we saw was that some of them went on additional intermittent dosing of semaglutide. Some of them intermittently used metformin. Some really didn't need anything. They would keep it off. But the additional doses or rounds of semaglutide did allow additional weight loss. And when we look at, again, the clinical study, the weight loss occurs very fast and then it really tapers off. When you go on a second round, you don't lose weight as fast again because you're at that already at that 14%. And in the study participants, they had maybe up to 20% weight loss. So it's not as strong the second time around, but it does allow additional weight loss. And this combination of semaglutide with holidays off the drug and taking the metformin and then starting again really allows you to cut down on the total amount of medication you're using. Plus, you're using the much lower dose, which is far less expensive. Okay, so if you use a commercial system and you're on it for a year, you're looking at over $15,000. Whereas using the system of intermittently using the semaglutide, maybe it's less than $2,000. So it's far less expensive, and then you're not taking as much medication. Now, in the clinical study, another clinical study that the manufacturer did, they said, well, if you stop the drug, you get the weight back. Therefore, you need to be on it forever. So they had one arm where they ran people out for 68 weeks, a little over a year and a half almost. And they saw this weight loss, about 16% body weight. And then they continued one group of people on this high dose, 2.4 milligrams a week of semaglutide. And another group, they said, okay, we're going to take you out of the study and see what happens. Well, here's what happened. In the study, they didn't just give them a shot. They gave them a shot of drug or placebo. They didn't just do that. They also said, we want you to exercise 150 minutes a week. So 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week. And we want you to cut your calories by 500 calories a day. Okay, so diet and exercise. Well, in the placebo group, they lost a couple percent of body fat, body weight, which could be expected. So if you were, 200 pounds, you might lose, 4 or 5 pounds. And the people that were 200 pounds who were on the drug, they might lose more like 30 pounds. And when they got to the 68 weeks, some people had lost 5%, some people lost 10%, some people 15%, some people 20%, some people over 20%. And they took a group of people, they said, well, stop the drug and stop exercising and go back to your old diet. Now, this, keeping in mind, as a drug company is doing this because they want to show you that you have to take their drug. Heaven forbid you continue to manage your lifestyle. Well, in that study, the people that had lost very little weight, they got it all back. But the people that lost over 20% of their body weight, they gained very little weight back because they did not abandon their new lifestyle. They did not abandon it. So people that were effective at losing weight, they didn't really need to take it forever. So I think that was very much a misleading information. Because typically, if you're going to do a lifestyle change and a drug's helping you out, you should continue the lifestyle change if you stop the drug. Hopefully that's what you would do. If you're going on a Mediterranean diet, start an exercise, let's continue that. So that's one flaw in the study, is that they told us to stop exercising and dieting, which we typically as doctors would not tell you to do. So that's part one. And there's some people obviously would like to take a drug and not worry about their lifestyle, but that's maybe not a practical solution for us as Americans. So in our grouping, we've asked people to continue to the lifestyle. We're not instructing people to exercise. We're giving them some advice. You should try and do a Mediterranean diet. We want you to take extra virgin olive oil every day, at least a tablespoon. That helps with weight loss too. Mediterranean diet is the most effective. That's a lifestyle change that can lead to long-term weight loss and health. That's one part I want to make clear. You don't have to take this drug forever. You can continue, you can lose the weight and then get a little help with either metformin or intermittent semaglutide and maintain the lifestyle. Again, in our first grouping in South Carolina, most of them didn't do a whole nother round of semaglutide. They just did a little, like a few weeks dose to keep the weight off. So that'd be an option for you to have a bottle in your fridge, this compounded 503B lab that makes it for us. They say the bottle's good for a year. And once it's pierced, it's good for 28 days. Well, it's probably good much longer than that, but that's kind of the official word. But you can keep this on hand and use it when you need to. So that's version one. The second thing I've been hearing, apparently from very famous podcasters and some people advertising that semaglutide causes lean muscle mass. And that's where most of the weight loss occurs, is in lean muscle mass. One very famous podcaster has actually said it's making people fatter. And he claims there's no studies showing preservation lean muscle mass. Well, that's false. I don't know why these misinformation is coming out of people that are seemingly our experts. I mean, they obviously have the ability to read the same literature that I do. These are published, peer-reviewed, and I cannot find any evidence to support this nonsense that's making people fatter. And I find plenty of evidence that is creating more lean body mass as a percentage of body mass. Now, when you are somebody who goes through a major weight loss, let's say they did bariatric surgery, that's where you do a stomach stapling, and they lose 100 pounds, they do lose some muscle mass. There's no doubt about that, because it takes less of a musculoskeletal system to carry around a 150-pound person than to carry a 300-pound person. That's just a fact of life. So somebody that is obese has got very thick bones and thick muscles that carry that frame around. And if you lose weight, the muscle mass does decline, but mostly you're losing fat. So this is something that happens. We look at people that go through bariatric surgery or go through weight loss. Typically, we look at lean muscle mass as a percentage of their overall weight. So if their lean muscle mass was at 50% of their overall weight, which is actually kind of high, and they lose weight and they're still 50% of their overall weight, that means they preserve muscle mass, even though they might have lost a pound or two of muscle. So clinical studies looking at the use of semaglutide in people that are not actually training, they're just using the drug, they've shown improvement of lean muscle mass, not worsening as suggested by these famous podcasters, which I don't know where they're getting this information. Others saying that they see it in their own practice. We're not seeing this. It's not been published. And there's 3 peer-reviewed articles I have on my other screen showing preservation of lean muscle mass. So preservation of lean muscle mass would imply that lean muscle mass as a percentage of your weight stays the same or gets better, and it stays the same or gets better. So this nonsense that you're going to lose muscle mass is unfounded. If you lose 100 pounds, you're going to lose some muscle mass because you don't need so many muscles carrying you around because you have 100 pounds less weight to locomotive around. So this is something that is very misleading, trying to scare the public off of something that's very safe. There's been studies showing that semaglutide we know that it reduces some autoimmune conditions. It reduces certain addictions, particularly food addictions. It reduces cardiovascular events. In fact, there's a recent paper showing that in diabetics who have a high risk of cardiovascular events, it likely adds 1.7 years onto their cardiovascular life. What's that worth? 1.7 years later to get a heart attack than you would otherwise. That's really kind of valuable. So semaglutide is cardioprotective in diabetics or non-diabetics, being studied for cardiovascular benefit in non-diabetics now, and it's been shown to be positive. It appears to extend cardiovascular life or life overall, all-cause mortality. Causes fat loss predominantly. There's some muscle mass loss, but preservation of lean muscle mass as a percentage of your body weight. That's really how we should be looking at muscle mass. So again, somebody goes from 300 pounds down to 150 pounds, they're going to have less muscle. Their bones won't be as heavy because it's not carrying around as much weight. That's just nature. So the idea that you have to eat a lot of protein or do this massive amount of exercise while taking semaglutide is nonsense. You can eat your Mediterranean diet that doesn't have a whole lot of protein in it, and probably should do some exercise. We should be doing that anyways if you're trying to get weight off. But the idea that you're going to lose predominantly muscle mass, and I've heard it said there's a doctor advertising his Plant Paradox book saying that you predominantly lose muscle mass. That's just false. So that is absolutely false. We can't just make this stuff up and, tell, as these are doctors saying this stuff that are promoting their own products. They're very misleading. I don't like seeing that. So let's do a summary and recap. So semaglutide was designed to take for the rest of your life, even after you lost weight, no longer obese. That's what the company wants. And they've got a drug that's very expensive. It's $15,000, $20,000 a year. And it's just untainable. Imagine like living with that kind of expense rate. If your insurance company's covering it, your insurance rates are going to go up and your employer is going to have some issues with paying for that. So can we look at different ways? Well, metformin is synergistic, meaning it aids semaglutide. They can be used together. Metformin raises GLP-1 levels. It slows down the breakdown of GLP-1, and semaglutide acts on the GLP-1 pathway. So they are synergistic. We can use semaglutide in a short period with the lower dose, which is 1 to 12 or 13 weeks, way less expensive than getting up to that high dose, which is 10 times higher than the weight loss dose, and then take a break and go on metformin to maintain that weight off, maintain that suppression of appetite. Metformin by itself does help with weight loss. And then if you need additional semaglutide, you can take it periodically at the lower dose or do another round if you want to lose an additional percentage of body weight. You can take another whole 12 weeks round. That'd be plausible to do. Also, it would be practical for you to be able to just get an injection periodically when you need it. We find that people start losing the weight at about week 4. Doesn't happen so much at week 1 and 2. But week 1 and 2, the habits start getting better. The appetite starts going down and the craving for junk food does go down. So that's a theoretical thing that can be done, is that you're going on a trip and you don't want to eat a bunch of junk food. You can take a semaglutide shot and suppress your appetite. It does not cause loss of lean muscle mass as a percentage of body weight. That's just false. There's been some talk about the semaglutide face where people, their face deflates. Well, I mean, if you're heavy, your face is full of fat. And when you lose weight, you're going to lose it out of your face and everywhere else. And in some cases, being a little heavy makes your face look potentially a little younger. And we do have ways to solve that. We use fillers that we do the magic lift, which basically takes up the space where the fat's gone. So that's really easy to handle. So I would use that as a reason to dissuade you from being healthier, because we know that when weight's lower, we're healthier, we're going to live longer. In this case, with semaglutide, 1.7 years, just based on a short-term use of it. So semaglutide, not something to be afraid of. It is a shot. There is a pill form that does cause weight loss, but the FDA-approved dose is up to 14 milligrams. And the weight loss dose is 50 milligrams. They only make a 50 milligram pill. So that's something that we might see out in the future. It was just published in The Lancet very recently this year. But it's a dose, really about 10 times higher than the oral dose of the oral form of semaglutide. That's not out yet. There might be something down the road. Right now it's an injectable. It's done once a week. And again, we do 12 or 13 weeks. Typically one bottle lasts about 13 weeks of the compounded semaglutide. And we switch over to metformin, usually 850 milligrams at night. Less GI distress when you take metformin at night. Some people get upset stomach with or no diarrhea. It doesn't happen at nighttime. The extended release form. And then if you need additional weight, wait about 6 or 8 weeks. You go back on it at this low dose, escalating up. The weight loss won't be as fast the second time as the first time. Usually we're seeing about 14% body weight the first time, but you will typically lose a little bit more weight. And then to keep it off long term, probably beyond continuous whatever lifestyle habits you picked up that are beneficial. Going on metformin long-term, that's safe. Metformin is actually being studied as an anti-aging drug. It appears to make people live longer. And it might be periodically using semaglutide or periodically doing cycles of semaglutide rather than taking it continuously to save on cost. So thank you very much.